This video is brought to you by Squarespace. If you're a blogger, artist, or merchant in need of an online presence, Squarespace has all the website building, marketing, and analytics tools you'll need to build a beautiful website and grow your brand.
We're on the group of people that was advising whether Pluto should remain a planet.
What you drawing there, sweetie? Pluto. Oh, is Pluto your favorite planet? This is nice. Oh, well, actually, I forgot. Pluto isn't technically a planet anymore. It's not.
They should just, get over it. Pluto had it coming from the beginning. Stay in your lane! Stay in your lane! Oh, hold me back.
Mom, get my magic markers. I'm gonna need my big guns for this one. Okay.
No, they're people like Mike Brown discovered the objects in the outer solar system that unfortunately had fun. In fact, he's guilty.
Now, some of your buddies at NASA want to reinstate Pluto as a planet.
No!
Hey friends, and welcome to the final installment of Turning Spinning Space Rock into Hot Person. I'm your host and outspoken defender of Pluto's planetary claim, and I'm out for blood. Today we'll be tackling the final 3 planets in the series, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And you know, in the first installment, I got a bunch of comments like, well, what's so wrong with being a dwarf planet? Dwarf planets are also cool. And I'm inclined to agree with you, but you see, it's the principle of the thing. It's like giving Pluto an Oscar and then being like, oh, wait, actually, we made a mistake. You suck a lot more than we initially thought, and we're gonna need that back. Thanks. Ow, my face! So we're counting Pluto today because number 1, yes, it is a planet, and number 2, less importantly, I've been doing these in sets of 3, and this is really the only way it makes sense. So my inspiration for these mostly follows the same trends as the first 2 installments. A lot of looking into sci-fi costuming from various properties along with street fashion and runway looks. But for these, I wanted to be a little bit more intentional about the themes I was going for since Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn got away from me a little bit. So I tried to really lean into some distinctive cold and icy themes since all of these planets are very cold, with Uranus and Neptune specifically being ice giants. So I tried to designate each with a particular type of cold aesthetic. And I also tried to build off the personality and presence I imagine these characters would have, which you'll learn about later in the video. So my thumbnails are always my jumping off point. Since I get pretty indulgent with the details on these, I need this step to rein me in and help me see the big picture a little more and make a lot of the important decisions about silhouette and color early on so I can actually focus on details later. And that was certainly the case with these, because I found myself being pretty indecisive at times. I always go in with a general vibe, but it's more of a fuzzy impression in my mind of the character rather than an actual idea I can grasp. So I did a good bit of iteration already with these, especially with Uranus and Neptune. Pluto was a little easier, but I really leaned into the broad strokes of who these characters are. I went for more of an icy look for Uranus, more of a watery theme for Neptune to reference the Roman god, and for Pluto I followed the cold weather aesthetics, but with a larger focus on a strong silhouette. Now that we have all the thumbnails laid out very nicely, we are ready to jump into it, but first, one of my New Year's resolutions is to polish up my portfolio a little bit so I can attract more jobs with private clients and begin selling at artist alleys. And if you're interested in doing the same, look no further than this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace offers dozens of professional and customizable website and portfolio templates that perfectly showcase your artwork, even if you have 0 website building experience, like me. Graphic design scares me, and I don't know what I'm doing. But creating a professional, polished portfolio with Squarespace is incredibly streamlined. Setting up my site only took about an hour thanks to their wonderful templates and high customization of features like colors, text, page blocks, and gallery tools like automatic image scaling that automatically arrange galleries of your work after you upload them. You can also easily create multiple portfolios for different purposes in one accessible location with their many website page template options. I have 3 portfolios on my site, one for my overall work, one for my clothing and costume designs, and one specifically for artist alleys. And if you're an artist, it's also likely that you sell your work online or in person. Squarespace makes it easy to find your products and portfolio in one convenient location with their e-commerce platform. I have mine linked to a print-on-demand service because I'm disorganized and I need robots to do my job for me. But if you're not not lazy and want to sell in person, when you do so using the Squarespace app, your inventory and sales analytics are kept in sync with your online store. So if you want to polish up your online presence for 2023, head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, head to squarespace.com/pricklyalpaca to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring my continued adventures in personifying abstract concepts. Now let's get back to it. So we're starting off with Uranus, named for the Greek god of the sky, and this is the proper way to say it. I better not get any wise guys in the comments section. This isn't funny joke time, okay? This is time for science. It's the 7th planet from the sun, the 4th largest planetary mass in the solar system, and one of 2 ice giants in our solar system alongside Neptune. Uranus's composition is largely made up of chemicals, and its hydrogen and helium-rich atmosphere resemble Jupiter and Saturn's. But comparatively, it has many more ices such as water, ammonia, methane, and traces of other hydrocarbons. The interior of Uranus is mostly composed of ice and rocks, but the ice mantle isn't composed of ice in the conventional sense according to Wikipedia, but of a quote hot and dense fluid consisting of water, ammonia, and other volatiles, which I could be wrong, but doesn't really sound like ice at all. Scientists are using the definition of ice a little loosely here, aren't we? However, that internal fluid structure also means it lacks any solid surface. It also features a complex and layered cloud system with a similar weather pattern to Jupiter and Saturn, but despite its similarity to the other giants, Uranus has some unique oddities. Uranus has the coldest planetary atmosphere in the solar system excluding Pluto, has a lower internal temperature than all the other gas planets, and its core radiates less heat than the planet receives from the sun. A common hypothesis for this is that Uranus sustained an impact that caused it to release most of its primordial heat, leaving it with a lower core temperature. The impact theory would also explain another odd feature of Uranus, an axis of rotation that's tilted almost completely sideways at a 99-degree angle. Uranus also features a ring system orbiting on that side axis. I would also like to formally state for the record that there is absolutely nothing funny about any of this. Think only scientific thoughts as I'm reading things about Uranus. Anyways, to get a little crazier, scientists think pressures and temperatures in Uranus may break up the methane molecules in the mantle, causing the carbon atoms to condense into diamonds and rain down like hailstones. So yeah, Uranus might also have diamond hail, which is pretty cool. In terms of satellites, it has 27 natural moons, and the 5 main satellites are Miranda, Ariel, Umbriel, Tatiana, and Oberon. And finally, according to astrology and the internet, Uranus has neutral gender energy, so that's the design language I'll be using today, albeit leaning slightly more into the feminine side since Uranus has a simple elegance that feels more femme to me. So as the coldest formal planet, I wanted to lean into a very icy theme with a silhouette that's very severe. So I went for a tall, slender frame, something that feels almost a little alien, and I wanted to mainly accentuate the shoulders in the silhouette with a little emphasis on the hips as well. So to play on the idea that the planet is tilted on its side and has a sideways ring system, I went for this avant-garde asymmetrical coat with one long train at the left hip and a high structured shoulder on the right that I hope looks like clouds. I paired this with some frosty nude pants that blend into white boots, cropped blue gloves, a choker, and an icy crown. I was really inspired by all the different ways designers manipulate and structure fabric for this look, specifically some of these. And this look was also heavily inspired by Daenerys Targaryen's fur coat dress with the structured collar because it felt very strong and regal. And moving on to the details, despite Uranus looking very simple from space, within the layers of the planet there's a bunch of ice and wild chemical reactions. So I added an icy, abstracted pattern flowing across the jacket from the shoulders down to the hip, and I recently discovered that each planet has a cool looking astrological symbol, so I tried to integrate that into each of their designs. So I used Uranus's as a buckle or clasp on their very complicated jacket, and tried to blend it in by adding spikes to the edge to resemble a snowflake. The overall texturing and patterning on the jacket and pants were also very inspired by the dress the White Witch wears in the first Narnia film, and the large updo was inspired by some of Jadis's hairstyles as well, along with some Viking hairstyles from other fantasy media. Following the same trend as the previous planets, I gave them little delicate diamonds hanging off their shoulder to represent their 27 moons, and I decided to represent their 5 major moons, Miranda, Ariel, Umbriel, Tatiana, and Oberon, with Arctic hairs because I felt like they matched Uranus's elegance and simplicity. In terms of color, I kept pretty strictly to the color palette of each planet for these, but with a specific layout in some cases. The Voyager 2 mission found that the visible southern hemisphere of Uranus can be divided into 2 regions, a bright polar cap and a dark equatorial band, so I tried to keep that banding reflected in the coloration of their design head to foot. In terms of personality, they're cold and icy, a person of few words unless they have a worthy retort, and very much an introvert who likes to keep to themselves. With more of a stoic presence and a taste for diamonds, they'd probably get along with Saturn, their next door neighbor. I think this character would be on the vain side, a bit neutral to others, and overall a little melancholy and deadpan. Perhaps a bit of an emo masquerading as an ice planet. Next up is Neptune, named for the Roman god of the sea, 3rd largest planet by mass, and the only planet found down through mathematical prediction. As I mentioned earlier, it's somewhat of a twin to Uranus since it's primarily composed of gas and liquids, has a very blue appearance due to atmospheric methane, and it has no solid surface. However, its gravitational pull is actually similar to that of Earth, so if you were able to stand on Neptune, it wouldn't feel that weird actually. Contrary to Uranus, Neptune has a significantly larger heat output, radiating 2 times more heat energy than it receives from the sun. And in contrast to Uranus's hazy atmosphere, Neptune's atmosphere features many visible weather patterns. Neptune's weather is characterized by extremely dynamic storm systems with winds reaching speeds of almost 600 meters per second, nearly reaching supersonic flow. Meaning Neptune has the strongest solar winds in the solar system, which also move opposite to the planet's rotation. Neptune also features many great dark spot storms that resemble Jupiter's Great Red Spot that dissipate and are replaced by new storms every so often. Neptune has 14 known moons, with its largest being Triton, and Triton is an interesting case because it has a retrograde orbit, meaning it orbits opposite to all of Neptune's other moons. This suggests that Triton was possibly captured by Neptune's gravitational pull from the Kuiper Belt. Neptune also has a faint and fragmented ring system, and according to the internet, mainly has feminine gender energy. So yay, I finally got to lean into a hyper-feminine silhouette again, and run with that I did. So the name of the game with Neptune was a bold, flowy runway silhouette, and since I was very inspired by Neptune as a god of the sea, that brought me to a lot of water-inspired runway looks, especially these. Again, I love the way fabric could be manipulated to look like ocean waves, and thought the texture of this fabric specifically looked like both crashing waves and swirling winds. So I basically designed the dress to look both like waves crashing over her and blue Neptunian winds sweeping around and engulfing her. And I gave her lots of fabric draping around her arms and off her hips to emphasize that effect. I also made her hair very swirly and wild, almost like it's submerged in seawater or blowing in the wind. For little details, I gave her quite a bit of jewelry and ornamentation, a lot of abstracted tentacles and waves with Triton symbols hidden in both her waist piece and her crown. I wanted it to allude to the sea and gusts of wind all at once. I also gave her little fishhook earrings. For her 14 moons, I represented them using gems hanging from her hip armor, and I represented Neptune's major satellite Triton with a giant squid that looks a bit like a kraken that she can control with the orb in the center of the piece. I also designed the head of the giant squid to look like the points of a Triton as well. In terms of personality, I think Neptune would be very kind and gracious until someone catches her wrath, sort of having an explosive temper similar to the planet's high violent winds or angry seas during a storm. And the fact that she basically has a kraken under her control definitely makes her a force to be reckoned with. But I think she'd also have a grace and flow in her calmer moments that's quite agreeable. With the nurturing and maternal side similar to Earth's, I think she would especially have a soft spot for Pluto, trying to mentor and reassure her as the only dwarf planet in the bunch. And finally, we have Pluto, which is probably my favorite design of the bunch. I think it just ended up hitting all the right marks. But anyways, Pluto is a dwarf planet in the Kuiper Belt, which has been described as a vast realm of icy worlds, primarily composed of ice and rock, and is much smaller than the inner planets. Pluto was discovered in 1930 as the first known object in the Kuiper Belt and was immediately named a planet.
Let's just call it, to like simplify things, let's just call it Kuiper.
However, it was found to be much smaller than initially thought, and scientists began to discover many other objects in the Kuiper Belt. There are estimated to be as many as 200 dwarf planets in the Kuiper Belt alone, and as many as 10,000 in our solar system, meaning that Pluto wasn't as unique as scientists first thought, and it was officially redesignated as a dwarf planet in 2006 after it no longer fit the full definition of a planet, much to the distress of every child ever.
Hey, I know you've been part of our thing here for like a million years, but
Get out.
please leave. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, Pluto.
The hate mail that was sent out by angry children would put Twitter trolls to shame. But in all seriousness, being a dwarf planet is just as cool. Pluto has 5 known moons, Charon the largest with a diameter a little over half that of Pluto, and Styx, Nix, Kerberos, and Hydra. Pluto also has an interesting feature on its surface called the Tomborago, I should have looked up how to pronounce that, a 1,000,000 square mile nitrogen glacier in the shape of a heart. Recent discoveries have revealed that this glacier dictates a lot of Pluto's atmospheric circulation. Scientists also speculate that there may be a water ocean under Pluto's crust, and they've also discovered that Pluto certainly was in the past and may still be volcanically active. Another unique feature of Pluto is that it lacks many small craters. Almost all its craters are big, like Sputnik Plantilla on the left side of Tomborago. And finally, according to the sources I could find, Pluto has feminine gender energy. So I was really excited for this one because Pluto feels so different from the other planets in a lot of ways, and I decided to lean into the ways in which she is different. So as a dwarf planet, I wanted to make her younger, more child-aged, and really make her feel small in the silhouette. I really wanted the silhouette to swallow her up, and I ended up finding this fur-trimmed cloak on Pinterest, which was a huge jumping off point for the design because the color allowed me to bring Pluto's heart shape into the silhouette. And from there, everything came together very nicely. I gave her a skirt underneath with a similar mermaid cut to the inspiration, a blue high collar, and some simple white gloves. Keeping the base of this look pretty plain meant I could go wild with the details since the surface of Pluto looks so interesting. I added a rocky, icy pattern to the skirt to evoke the patterns on the surface of Pluto in the different planes, and also added a bit of white fur to the top of the colors pile to allude to its icy poles. And the simplicity of this also allowed me to focus more on her face. So since Pluto's surface looks like a spotted combination of rocks and ice, I gave her a two-tone braided hairstyle that very much gives Todoroki core. I think it also helps to make her look young, and I finished off those details with a fine brooch at the collar in the shape of her astrological symbol, a clasp on the coat made up of 2 Pluto symbols rotated sideways, and a spindly crown with 3 abstracted wolf heads on it. I was a little stumped at first on what to do for Pluto's animal companions, but apparently the classical god Pluto is often accompanied by a Cerberus, so I gave Pluto 2 beasts to represent its 5 moons, 1 Cerberus with a traditional 3 heads, and 1 with 2. Each moon is represented by a wolf head in her jewelry, 3 heads on the crown, and it's a little hard to see, but the other 2 represented by wolf heads on the bicep of her sleeves near the knotting. In terms of personality, I think she would be sweet and kind on the surface, but overall a little angry. I think she would feel a little uneasy and unsure about her place in the universe, not really sure what a dwarf planet's role in the pantheon is, so she's very much trying to develop her identity as a young god. So Neptune mentors her, and many of the other planets dote on her and build her up, but she doesn't have their same power or devoted followers. So as a planet with the namesake of the god of the underworld, who knows, she might take an evil turn and seek revenge for losing her title. Not that I'm gonna make that story though. Anyways, here are the finished designs. I'm definitely pretty pleased with how they came out, especially since I don't always love keeping things this monochromatic and using so much blue, but I think the lack of color variation forced me to use a lot more texture and come up with cooler silhouettes, which I definitely think helps to push me whenever I'm designing. But anyways, let me know what you think. As always, feel free to contribute backstories or alternate names, and do also let me know what other weird space things I can turn into characters. These are always so much fun to do. Or leave me suggestions of any other kind. I keep a long list for these character design episodes, and I'm looking forward to digging my teeth into some other ideas very soon. Hello there. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you watched all 3 of the Planet Character series. I had a lot of fun with this one. I love space. I'm a huge nerd, even though I'm kind of dumb, and I don't exactly comprehend most of it, but it's still so much fun to look into, and I love an excuse to actually try to learn something new because, you know, being out of college and sort of an adult with a fake job, I don't always have an opportunity to learn something new and make my brain wrinklier, so it's a fun time whenever I can do that. So once again, thank you so much for watching, and the wrinkliest, brainiest of thank yous goes to my patrons, especially my executive producers. Wolven_Arts, Corvid Dome, Lovisa, Eloquent Silence, In the Galaxy, Cleos, Meeks Hunter, Megan Penland, Sushi McNushi, Satoni, Mel W, Jim Jiminy, India Gloom, Hypnos, Refmlings, Katie, Michael Twycross, Sweetwintergarden, Gravity Drop, Panda Pie 365, Bobo McFo, Will Schmidt, and Bean the Bread. And if you would so like to join my Patreon, I'm hoping to have some more fun, actual, tangible stuff launching in 2023, which I will probably post on a community tab post in the very near future. So the link will be in the description if you would like to support me there. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to get back home. Bye!
Heard about Pluto? It's messed up, right?